Bonsoir, good evening. My name is Antoine Leboyer. I run a company called GSX. Now, don't feel embarrassed if you haven't heard of us. We operate into a very niche space. We develop complex technical software, which is used by large organizations to make sure that their email is working fine. In my daily work, I meet people in large organizations. Large banks use our products. We have partners which are mobile operators, big system integrators. We've got technology partners like Microsoft. And when I meet directors or executives at these large companies, there's always a question that pops up, which is basically, how big is your company? So it's very simple. There's about 50 people working in GSX, and we only do 6 million of revenue. When I give these numbers, there's something that nearly always happens. There's a 1/2 of a second of silence where the person in front of me is thinking, pondering on what this means. And I know what they think, and I know what a few of you are thinking. You are thinking, and they are thinking, these are not big numbers. There are more people working for me. I'm responsible in my company for a much larger revenue. In essence, what they are thinking is that they would have no problem doing what I do. And probably it's true, okay? And that's true probably also of you as well. What happens and what I want to discuss with you is the discussion that takes place after this sort of 1/2 of a second of silence. And I'd like to be able, by doing this, to tell you what is the real magic beyond size of running a small company. So the first thing that I normally have to do is that I have to dispel a few myths about the role of the CEO in smaller company. Normally, in their mind, the CEO is the person which is going to be taking the very big, important decisions. And we've all have in business history books example of such decisions. Intel used to be only doing memory chips, and suddenly they decided this was not going to be a good business, and they made a big switch to go into semiconductors. That's a very big decision. Much closer to us, Steve Jobs decided to put Apple into the music business as a whole, and that's another big decision. And Andy Grove in Intel, Steve Jobs at Apple, they are associated with these important decisions and credited with the success that came out of them. If you read books about how this whole took place, you realize that actually they were not alone. The executives that I speak to, they were actually associated with this type of big decisions. Otherwise, by the way, it would never work. The best notion that comes, which is well documented, is that Jobs didn't want iTunes to work on a Windows platform. Actually, it was done in spite of him. He maybe took the credit after and thought it was a great idea, but these decisions were not taken by the almighty CEO. They were taken by the people who are, the executives working with him. In my small company, 5 years ago, we had to make a very big decisions. We had to take all the work that we are doing into the IBM world and decide if we wanted to go into the Microsoft world to do the same thing. We had zero brand awareness in this world. The fact of coming to the IBM world was actually seen as a liability, and we were not sure that we were going to be able to master all the technical challenges of moving from one world to the other. So this was a big decision to take. Well, let me tell you, I didn't take the decision myself alone. I actually made sure that everyone in every department could be associated with a decision, could think of the values, of the issues, on the challenges, and we all discussed this together. So no, the myth of the almighty godlike CEO making decision by himself, well, I'm sorry, but that doesn't happen. Another thing which I have to describe to the person that I'm talking to is that I know it's a surprise for them, but if they become CEO of a small company, they are going to lose social status. My wife jokes and says that she had a much easier time explaining to her friends and family what her husband was doing when I was in IBM. She's not in my business, and she didn't need to explain more than that. Now she's got to explain that I work into a company called GSX, and she's got to explain what this is, and it's much harder for her to do that. But there's another story that I want to tell you. We have in our organization someone that joined us 10 years ago, and he's a great guy. He runs all sales and marketing. When he joined us 10 years ago, he was actually an intern that came from the IBM server division. And what he told me after a month joining is that he was surprised because when he was leaving a phone call, unlike what was in the past, people didn't always answer, or they didn't answer that fast. So you had the same guy, that suddenly was realizing that by being associated with a big company and know the value of the big company, he had some sort of status. By going into a smaller one, he had lost this status. And even now that he is running a sales organization and doing really well, he knows that he's got to fight a little harder than when he was an intern at IBM. So, if you're in a small company, you are not godlike making decisions, and you probably lose a bit of social status. So, where is the magic? Where is the interest? To tell you that, I have to tell you a story that took place about 25 years ago. I actually resigned from IBM to go and do some studies in the US, and my second line manager, the boss of my boss, asked to see me. So I remember we went to a nice cafe outside of the office, and he took the time to explain to me what had been his career path, what had been the career path of the country manager that everyone was looking with awe and admiration and respect. And he explained that he moved from a situation where he had some specific task, and then because he did well and he was known, he explained that he moved to another organization with some people to manage, and then he moved to another one where he had a bigger territory, and at each of the steps, his tasks, his success was associated with bigger revenue to produce. And basically, by leaving IBM, all the goodwill which I had developed and accumulated by being known during 4 years in an organization, that was going to vanish. In other words, you leave IBM, you may go to a great place to do some studies, you are losing value. So I enjoyed the fact that he took the time to spend, to discuss with me, but I wasn't completely convinced. I actually was an engineer by training, and I was always a bit upset that I could not have so much impact on the product which I was selling. And I tried to explain this to him by comparing the role of the country manager of IBM, who had at the time 1,000 people working for him, so someone who had real impact and capabilities, to the guy running the cafe. And what I describe are the differences in decisions that both of these guys had got to do. If you've got 1,000 people to manage, the issue is going to be, well, which one do you hire? Which one do you promote? Do you assign them to this group of product or to this type of customers? Do you send them in the east, in the south, and so on? These are not simple decisions, and I've got huge respect for people who do this and who do this as well as this guy was doing. But compare this to the decision that the cafe owner has got to do. Well, he's got to worry about inventory. He's got to worry about pricing. He's got to worry about what to put in front of the window to get people to come in. He's got to worry about the menu. He's got to worry about one of the most important things they have to do is hire people and make sure that they turn up every day. He's got to make sure that the books get closed, that he can report on all type of regulations. So you realize, whenever I've described these things, the guy has got decisions to take which are not so complex as the one that I've described for the country manager, but which are very wide. There are a lot of decisions that the guy has got to do, the guy who runs the cafe, that the country manager has not got to do. And ultimately what I felt is that I appreciated the boss of my boss telling me that the depth of this, or I was going to increase some more depth of responsibilities by staying in IBM. But I felt that what I wanted was not to increase my depth necessarily. I wanted to increase the width of responsibilities which I had. And if I had stayed into IBM, I would probably have been gaining these, but there are many questions that I would never ask myself. When I moved into another organization, which was much smaller, I suddenly started realizing how much I had been operating in an organization where a lot of things were prepared for me. I was in charge of developing a partner channel for the first time in Europe. And when I arrived, I asked what were the pricing structure, whether we had contracts that were ready. And guys looked at me and said, well, we don't have any. When I was in IBM, I had unbelievably smart people who had prepared this for me, and all what I had to do was to execute. So one of the things that we've done in my small organization is that we've had to worry about developing new product, deciding where to go, deciding how to price them, redesigning the website, the marketing, worrying about legal issues, about the books, worrying about deciding to go and not to go in certain country or not. So as you can see from my gesture, I've increased tremendously the amount and the width of responsibility which I had. And this is what is the real magic of running a small company. You don't have the depths that the country manager of 1,000 people used to have. Now, make no mistake, I'm very jealous of the guy. I'd love to get 1,000 people pushing my product once we've developed and we've made the effort of putting them to market and make them work. And I don't want my company to stay at this size. But when I've had to make a choice, a decision choice of a career, what I've realized is that I like the wide responsibilities more than I like the depths. And given the fact that this is a TED Talk at that university, you got to think that you are going to have to think yourself whether you are a depth person or a width person. I don't think you'll get any grades by being a width person. I don't think that the guys who've organized this TED Talk will get better grades on the university for having done such a great work. But ultimately, what they are saying is that they are comfortable doing something different, discovering a lot of things that they had not discovered, and they are saying that they are also a little bit of a depth person. When I went to the US, I discussed with the head of admission at the university where I was studying, and she told me something that, given your age, you should think about it. She said that basically she received lots of applications. They only take something like 10% of the people who apply. So she's got to find ways of making sure that she selects the right person. So maybe half of them may not have the correct grades that she expects, but ultimately, it's very difficult for her to assess what are the typical grades in Geneva, Germany, Japan, China, India, wherever. So she tries to get the people that have got certain standards. And then what does she do? Because she needs to find a way of getting and selecting the right people. What she does is that she looks whether candidates have got personality. She looks for what candidates have done beyond their studies to show that ultimately they are not necessarily narrowly looking at something and becoming an expert, but then they kept expanding. And I don't know exactly if she would say this like this, but she's looking not necessarily for depth, she's looking for people for width. So this is the nice thing about running a small organization. It's thinking in terms of enlarging your responsibilities. So as you are doing your studies and you'll have to make a number of decisions, think whether you are more of a depth person or if you're more a width person. And the next time you'll have a coffee, I don't know if it will make the coffee taste better, but it will make probably a coffee drinking a more interesting experience. Think of all the responsibilities of the guys who are serving you. Thank you.